My parents said I was a useless failure and threw me out. Go live in the streets, Dad yelled. They didn't know I earned $10 million a year, so I just smiled and left. 3 weeks later, they saw my interview on TV and started begging me for money. I, 32M, stood in the living room of my childhood home, watching my father's face turn red as he screamed at me to get out. My mother sat on the couch, arms crossed, nodding along with every word. They told me I was a disappointment, a failure who would never amount to anything. Dad said I should go live in the streets since I was clearly incapable of making something of myself. I just smiled, picked up my small bag, and walked out the door. What they didn't know was that I had just closed a deal worth $8 million that morning. The thing about my parents was that they measured success in very specific ways. My father worked in middle management at a manufacturing company for 30 years. My mother was a school teacher. They valued stability, traditional career paths, and most importantly, appearances. When I dropped out of my engineering program 7 years ago to pursue software development and cryptocurrency trading, they saw it as the ultimate betrayal. To them, I was throwing away a guaranteed future for childish dreams. I tried explaining it to them multiple times over the years. I told them about my work in blockchain technology, about the consulting firm I had quietly built, about the investments I was making. They never listened. Every family gathering became an interrogation about when I would get a real job, when I would stop wasting my life, when I would finally grow up and be responsible like my older brother who worked as an accountant at a reputable firm. My brother made $70,000 a year and owned a modest house in the suburbs. My parents treated him like he had conquered the world. I made $10 million last year alone. But I wore regular clothes, drove a 7-year-old sedan, and rented a modest apartment in the city. I didn't believe in flashy displays of wealth. Money was a tool, not a trophy. This philosophy was completely foreign to my parents, who measured success by the car in your driveway and the neighborhood you lived in. The final confrontation happened because I refused to loan my brother $50,000 for a down payment on a bigger house. My parents called me selfish and ungrateful. They said after everything they had done for me, the least I could do was help family. I tried to explain that my brother never paid back the $15,000 I had given him 3 years ago, and that I wasn't a bank. This sent my father into a rage. He said I was making excuses because I was broke and jealous of my brother's success. He said I was an embarrassment to the family. That's when he told me to leave and never come back until I got my life together. So I left. I went back to my apartment, made myself dinner, and continued working on a project for a client in Singapore. The next morning, I had a video conference with investors in London. Life went on exactly as it had before, except now I didn't have to endure monthly dinners filled with criticism and disappointment. 2 weeks after the incident, my assistant asked if I wanted to do an interview with a major business network. They were doing a piece on young entrepreneurs who were revolutionizing the financial technology sector. I usually avoided media attention, but something made me say yes this time. Maybe it was petty. Maybe I was tired of hiding. Either way, I agreed to the interview. The filming took place in my actual office, a sleek space in a high-rise downtown that I rarely mentioned to anyone. The interviewer asked about my background, my education, my journey to success. I answered honestly. I talked about dropping out of university, about the years of self-teaching and risk-taking, about the failures and breakthroughs. I mentioned that my family hadn't supported my choices, and that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who doubt you the most. When they asked about my annual revenue, I gave them the real numbers. $10 million in personal income last year, with projections to hit $15 million this year. The interviewer seemed impressed. I just stated it as fact. The episode aired 3 weeks after I walked out of my parents' house. I was at my desk working when my phone started buzzing. Text after text, call after call. I ignored most of them until I saw one from my cousin asking if I had seen the news. She sent me a link to the interview, which had been uploaded to the network's website and was being shared across social media. Then my brother called. He wanted to know if the interview was real, if those numbers were accurate. I told him yes, everything was true. There was a long pause before he asked why I never told anyone about my success. I reminded him that I had tried many times, but no one ever believed me or cared to listen. He didn't have much to say after that. My mother called an hour later. She sounded different, her voice strange and careful. She said she had seen the interview and wanted to talk. I asked what she wanted to talk about. She stumbled over her words before finally saying that maybe they had been too harsh, that perhaps they didn't fully understand what I was doing. I stayed quiet, letting her fill the silence. Eventually, she asked if I could come over for dinner that weekend. I told her I was busy. My father called the next day. He didn't apologize. Instead, he talked about family, about how blood was thicker than water, about how we shouldn't let disagreements tear us apart. He mentioned that my brother was still looking for help with his house, and that now that I was doing so well, surely I could spare some money to help family. I asked him if he remembered telling me to go live in the streets. He got quiet, then said he didn't mean it like that he was just frustrated. I told him he meant every word. The calls kept coming throughout the week. My mother wanted to meet for coffee. My father wanted to introduce me to some of his friends who were interested in investment opportunities. My brother needed business advice. Everyone suddenly wanted to reconnect. I declined every request. A month passed, and the interview had gained serious traction. Several news outlets picked it up as part of a larger story about non-traditional paths to success. My company's profile increased significantly, leading to more client inquiries and partnership opportunities. It was good for business, even if it complicated my personal life. My parents showed up at my office unannounced one Tuesday afternoon. Security called up to ask if I wanted to see them. I almost said no, but curiosity got the better of me. I told them to send my parents up. They walked into my office looking uncomfortable and out of place. My mother kept glancing around at the modern furniture and the city views. My father stood stiffly near the door. I didn't offer them seats. I asked what they wanted. My mother started talking about family unity and forgiveness. She said parents make mistakes and that they only wanted what was best for me. My father added that they had always believed in me deep down, that their criticism came from a place of love and concern. I let them talk until they ran out of rehearsed lines. Then I asked them a simple question. I wanted to know if they would be standing in my office right now if they hadn't seen that interview. Would they have called to apologize if they still thought I was a broke failure living paycheck to paycheck? Neither of them answered. I told them the truth then. I explained that for 7 years I had tried to share my life with them, to help them understand what I was building. They refused to listen because it didn't fit their narrow definition of success. They were embarrassed by me at family gatherings, made jokes about my lifestyle, and constantly compared me unfavorably to my brother. The only thing that changed was their perception of my bank account. My father tried to interrupt, but I kept talking. I said that when I walked out of their house 3 weeks ago, I felt relieved. No more judgment, no more having to justify my existence, no more pretending that their approval mattered to me. The interview wasn't meant to prove anything to them. It was just an opportunity that came along. My mother started crying and said they were sorry, that they didn't realize how much they had hurt me. My father looked angry but stayed quiet. I told them I appreciated the apology, but that sorry didn't erase 7 years of contempt. Then I addressed the real reason for their visit. I knew they wanted money. My brother had probably been complaining about his finances. My parents likely had some expenses they were worried about. Now that they knew I was wealthy, they saw me as a solution to their problems. I told them I wasn't interested in being their ATM. My father finally spoke up and said that family helps family. I reminded him that he threw me out of his house and told me to live in the streets. He said I was being petty and holding grudges. I told him I was being consistent. For years they made it clear I was a disappointment and a failure. I was simply respecting their assessment by keeping my distance. My mother begged me not to cut them off completely. She said they made mistakes, but they were still my parents. I told her she was right. They were my parents, and that meant they had a responsibility to support and believe in me when I needed it most. They failed that responsibility repeatedly. The consequences of their choices weren't my problem to fix. I asked them to leave. My father called me ungrateful and selfish on their way out. My mother cried harder. I closed my office door and went back to work. Update 1. The office visit happened 2 months ago. Since then, my parents have tried reaching out several more times through various family members. My aunt called to say I should be the bigger person. My uncle suggested family therapy. My cousin said my parents were genuinely sorry and that I should give them another chance. I maintained my boundaries. What I didn't expect was for my brother to show up at my apartment one evening. He looked tired and frustrated. He wanted to talk without our parents around. I let him in and offered him a drink. He accepted. My brother told me that our parents had been struggling financially more than anyone knew. Dad's company had downsized, and he took an early retirement package that wasn't as substantial as they had hoped. Mom's pension wasn't enough to cover their lifestyle. They had been living on credit cards and loans for the past 2 years, keeping up appearances while drowning in debt. I asked why he was telling me this. He said because they were too proud to admit it themselves, and because he couldn't help them anymore. He had his own family to take care of and his own mortgage to pay. The $50,000 he asked for wasn't actually for a bigger house. It was to help our parents catch up on their bills. They had made him promise not to tell me. I sat with this information for a moment before asking my brother if he thought I should help them. He said he didn't know, that it was my decision. Then he added something that surprised me. He said he didn't blame me for being angry, that our parents had treated me terribly for years, and that he had never stood up for me when he should have. My brother admitted that he was jealous of my success, and that part of him had enjoyed being the favored son. But watching our parents desperately try to reconnect with me only after discovering my wealth had made him realize how conditional their love and respect had always been. He said it wasn't fair and that he was sorry for being part of the problem. I appreciated his honesty. I asked him what he wanted from me. He said nothing, that he just wanted me to know the full situation before making any decisions. Our parents were too proud to ask for help directly, so they were trying to rebuild a relationship as a pathway to eventually requesting financial assistance. He thought I deserved to know their strategy. After my brother left, I spent the next few days thinking about what to do. I wasn't interested in rewarding my parents' behavior or enabling their poor financial planning. But I also wasn't cruel enough to let them lose their home if I could prevent it. I hired a financial advisor to assess my parents' situation and create a budget plan. Then I set up a meeting with my parents at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. I told them I knew about their financial problems and that I was willing to help under specific conditions. First, they had to acknowledge that their treatment of me over the years was wrong and hurtful. Not a casual sorry, but a real acknowledgement of how their constant criticism and dismissal affected me. Second, they had to work with the financial advisor I hired to create a sustainable budget and payment plan. I would pay off their immediate debts, but they had to prove they could manage money responsibly going forward. Third, our relationship would be rebuilt slowly and on my terms. No more demands, no more expectations, no more comparisons to my brother. My father bristled at the conditions and said I was being controlling. My mother looked desperate and quickly agreed to everything. I told my father he could either accept my help with conditions or figure it out on his own. His choice. He eventually agreed. I paid off $60,000 in credit card debt and covered 3 months of their mortgage while they got their finances in order. The financial advisor met with them weekly and helped them understand where their money was actually going. It turned out they were spending far beyond their means trying to keep up with their friends and neighbors. Update 2. It's been 6 months since I helped my parents with their debt. The relationship is still complicated and probably always will be. We have dinner once a month, usually at a restaurant, and the conversations are polite but surface level. They ask about my work and I give general updates. I ask about their lives and they share small details. Nobody mentions the past unless absolutely necessary. My mother seems genuinely remorseful now that the initial panic about money has passed. She's made efforts to understand my work and has even read some articles about cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. She asks thoughtful questions and listens to the answers. It's strange and a bit uncomfortable, but it's something. My father is more resistant to change. He still makes occasional comments about traditional careers and stability. He struggles to accept that he was wrong about me, but he's trying, in his own limited way, to be less critical. I think he's more afraid of losing access to me completely than he is interested in actual reconciliation. My brother and I have grown closer through all of this. He's building his own path now, making decisions based on what he wants rather than what our parents expect. He quit his accounting job and started a consulting business. It's not making millions, but he's happier and more fulfilled. We meet for lunch every few weeks and talk about business, family, and life. It's the relationship I always wanted with my sibling. The interview that started all of this has led to more media opportunities, speaking engagements, and business growth. I'm more selective now about what I accept, but I've learned that visibility has its advantages. Several young people have reached out to say the interview inspired them to pursue non-traditional careers despite family pressure. That's been unexpectedly meaningful. I've also started investing in financial literacy programs and entrepreneurship education for young adults. If my experience taught me anything, It's that many people are trapped by narrow definitions of success passed down from generations who lived in different economic realities. Breaking those cycles requires both education and support. As for my relationship with my parents, I don't know if we'll ever be truly close. Too much damage was done over too many years. But we've reached a place of mutual respect, even if it's based partially on fear of consequences rather than genuine understanding. My mother is learning. My father is tolerating. It's not the family dynamic I would have chosen, but it's the one we're building. The most important lesson I learned through all of this is that you don't owe anyone access to your success, not even family, especially if they only want you around once you can benefit them. Real relationships are built on mutual respect and support through all circumstances, not just when it's convenient or profitable. I don't regret walking out that day. I don't regret maintaining my boundaries. And I don't regret helping them on my terms rather than theirs. Sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is refusing to accept crumbs of approval from people who should have given you their full support all along. My life is mine to live, and I'm finally doing it on my own terms. If you like this story, please like this video and subscribe us for more such real life-based stories. Thanks in advance.